Who's she targeting? The words cut through the command tent just as Staff Sergeant Maya Rourke settled behind the Barrett .50, her cheek pressed against the stock, her right eye locked into the glass. No one breathed. Not the radio operator hunched over a dead frequency. Not the intelligence officer staring at the drone feed as static crawled across the screen. Not the two SEALs standing behind Commander Ethan Cross, their faces tight with the helpless anger of men forced to watch their own team trapped in a valley 3,000 meters away. Outside, the Afghan wind moved over the ridge like a living thing. Inside, Maya did not move at all. Her finger rested along the trigger guard. Her left hand adjusted the rear bag by less than an inch. One breath in. Half a breath out. Hold. On the monitor, the rest of them saw chaos, dust rising from broken rock, muzzle flashes from the high ridge, a pinned convoy in the valley floor, SEALs dragging themselves behind the wreck of a burned-out vehicle. They saw too much movement, too much distance, too much mountain. Maya saw one man in shadow. Not the loudest shooter. Not the closest one. Not the one everyone else had marked. A signalman. A watcher. The spine of the ambush. Commander Cross leaned closer to the spotter scope, his jaw tightening. "That's impossible," someone whispered. Maya heard him. She gave no sign that she had. The valley stretched below them in hard layers of sun and stone. Heat shimmer bent the distance. Wind cut left across the first ridge, dropped into the basin, then climbed hard on the far wall. Any ordinary shot would die somewhere in that moving air, swallowed by terrain and physics before it ever reached the target. But Maya Rourke was not guessing. She was listening. To the wind. To the rhythm of the valley. To the silence between radio calls. Then the Barrett thundered. The blast rolled off the rocks and crossed the ridge like a door slamming shut on every insult ever thrown at her. Commander Ethan Cross froze. And for the first time that morning, no one in the command tent said another word. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if you believe in courage and respect, hit like and subscribe. These stories inspire change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Maya. 6 hours earlier, no one at Forward Operating Base Kestrel knew her name. Not really. They knew the patch on her sleeve. They knew the quiet woman who showed up before sunrise, cleaned weapons without conversation, signed inventory sheets with sharp block letters, and disappeared before the mess hall filled with noise. They knew she was attached to the sniper support element. They knew she had been transferred in from a unit whose name had been blacked out in 3 different places. But men often mistake silence for emptiness. Maya Rourke had learned that early. At 32, she was not the tallest soldier in the compound. She did not walk like she wanted the room to turn toward her. She did not laugh loudly at the weapons table or trade stories about firefights over burned coffee. Her brown hair stayed pinned beneath her patrol cap. Her uniform was clean but faded at the seams. Her boots were old enough to tell the truth about her. Still, to the younger men at Kestrel, she looked ordinary. Too ordinary. That morning, she sat alone beneath a strip of shade beside the armory, the Barrett M82 laid open in front of her like an engine being rebuilt by a surgeon. Each piece rested on a tan cloth in perfect order. Bolt carrier. Spring. Barrel assembly. Magazine. Optic mount. Cleaning rod. Her hands moved slowly, not because she lacked confidence, but because haste had no place around a rifle that could change the fate of a team from miles away. A pair of junior marksmen passed behind her. One of them, Corporal Hayes, slowed just enough to smirk. "Careful with that thing," he said. "It kicks harder than most people expect." His friend chuckled. Maya ran a patch through the barrel and held it briefly to the light. "Clean." Hayes leaned against the table, close enough to be disrespectful, not close enough to be brave. "You certified on that platform, Sergeant?" Maya did not look up. "Yes." The one-word answer irritated him more than an argument would have. Hayes nodded toward the rifle. "Funny. I heard support staff were getting familiarization training now. Guess command wants everybody to feel included." The second marksman laughed louder this time. Across the yard, a mechanic looked over, sensed trouble, and went back to pretending he had not heard anything. Maya placed the patch aside and reached for the bolt. No tremor. No reaction. Hayes watched her hands and mistook control for fear. That rifle weighs almost 30 pounds loaded, he continued. Long walk up a ridge for someone your size. Now Maya looked at him. Not sharply. Not angrily. Just enough. Her eyes were gray-green, steady in a way that made the morning seem suddenly quieter. Hayes held the stare for half a second too long, then looked away as if checking the motor pool. I carry what the mission requires, she said. The words were calm. Almost soft. That made them worse. A few feet away, Commander Ethan Cross stepped out of the operations building with a mug of coffee he had forgotten to drink. He had arrived at Kestrel 3 days earlier with a 12-man SEAL detachment and a list of problems no one on base wanted to say out loud. Bad terrain. Weak intelligence. Enemy spotters hidden in the mountains. Patrols taking fire from distances that turned normal tactics into prayers. Cross was 39, broad-shouldered, and tired in the way only command makes a man tired. He noticed details other men ignored: a loose sling, a dirty chamber, a soldier who laughed too loudly before stepping outside the wire. That was why he noticed Maya. Not her size. Not her face. Her sequence. She reassembled the Barrett without glancing at the table. Her fingers found each part by memory. She checked the optic mount twice, then checked it again with the kind of patience that did not come from training manuals. When she seated the bolt, there was no wasted movement. When she locked the rifle down, she did it with the quiet certainty of someone who had trusted that weapon with more than a qualification score. Cross stopped walking. Hayes noticed him and straightened. Morning, Commander. Cross did not answer right away. His eyes remained on Maya's hands. What's your name, Sergeant? He asked. Maya stood, but she did not rush. She came to attention with the Barrett resting on the table between them. Rourke, sir. Staff Sergeant Maya Rourke. Cross studied her face. There was something familiar about the name. Not from personnel rosters. Not from base briefings. Somewhere deeper, buried in after-action whispers and classified summaries that men read once and never forgot. But before he could place it, the radio tower above them cracked with static. Then a voice came through, strained and fast. Kestrel, this is Raven 1. Contact. Contact. We are pinned in the valley. The radio transmission froze the armory yard. For 1 second, every sound on forward operating base Kestrel seemed to drop away: the clink of tools, the low rumble of generators, the distant chop of a helicopter warming on the pad. Then the base came alive. Raven 1, say again, the radio operator barked from inside the operations building. Confirm contact. The voice came back through bursts of static. Confirmed. Multiple shooters, elevated positions. North Ridge and East Shelf. We have one vehicle disabled. Taking accurate fire. Repeat, accurate fire. Commander Ethan Cross was already moving. His coffee hit the dirt untouched. Talk. Now. The SEALs around him turned and ran. Corporal Hayes shoved away from the weapons table, his smirk gone, replaced by the pale focus of a man hearing a real fight break open. Maya remained beside the Barrett for half a heartbeat longer, her eyes lifting toward the mountains beyond the wire. The Hindu Kush rose in jagged blue-gray teeth against the morning sky. Somewhere out there, men were trapped. She closed the rifle case with one hand. Inside the Tactical Operations Center, the air felt too small for the number of people suddenly packed into it. Screens glowed against canvas walls. Radios overlapped. A map of the valley was spread across the main table, marked with grease pencil lines, patrol routes, old ambush points, and 3 red circles nobody liked looking at. Cross stepped to the center. Where are they? A lieutenant pointed to the map. Raven 1 was returning from Nadir village. They hit contact here, between Checkpoint Stone and the dry riverbed. Lead vehicle disabled. They reversed into cover, but the valley walls have them boxed. How many shooters? Unknown. Raven reports at least 4 positions. Distance? The lieutenant swallowed. From our closest overwatch point? Between 2,700 and 3,300 meters, depending on which ridge they're using. The room tightened. That was not a number soldiers liked. At 800 meters, a good rifleman mattered. At 1200, a trained sniper could change the field. Past 2000, the mountains started deciding who lived and who didn't. Wind, elevation, heat, angle, spin drift, everything became a question with no forgiving answer. Cross looked at the drone feed. The image flickered in and out. Dust clouds. Broken rock. A flash of movement. Then static. Why is ISR breaking? Signal interference, the intelligence officer said. Could be terrain. Could be deliberate. Cross's jaw worked once. Air support. Apache is 16 minutes out. Weather cell moving over the southern pass. They're trying to reroute. 16 minutes is too long. No one argued. Through the radio, Raven 1 came again. Kestrel, we have wounded but mobile. Enemy has us ranged. Every time we move, they walk rounds into us. Cross leaned toward the microphone. Raven 1, this is Cross. Hold position. Smoke if you can. We're working your ridge. A pause. Then the reply, tight and controlled. Copy, Commander. But they've got eyes on everything. Those words changed the room. They've got eyes. Not just shooters. Not just lucky fire from a mountain slope. A spotter. Someone was controlling the ambush. Cross looked at the sniper team leader. Get me a firing solution. The team leader, Master Sergeant Nolan, was already checking the valley board. He was a seasoned shooter, compact and hard-eyed, with the confidence of a man who had earned his calm the expensive way. He shook his head before anyone wanted him to. Sir, from our ridge? No clean line. Even if we move to the North Tower, we're looking at extreme range through crosswind and heat distortion. I didn't ask if it was pretty. No, sir. I'm saying the shot isn't responsible. Hayes, standing near the door with his rifle. Slun glanced toward Maya as she entered carrying the Barrett case. Maybe support staff wants to try, he muttered, just loud enough for the men near him to hear. A few eyes turned. Maya said nothing. She walked to the side table and opened the case. The Barrett lay inside, dark and heavy, its metal catching the dim light like something pulled from deep water. She lifted it without strain, not quickly, not to prove anything, but with the practiced balance of someone who knew exactly where the weight lived. Cross noticed. So did Nolan. Rourke, Nolan said, his voice guarded. This isn't a range day. No, Maya replied. It's not. The room went quiet around that sentence. Hayes let out a small breath through his nose. You heard Master Sergeant Nolan. No clean shot. Maya set the Barrett on the table and unfolded the bipod. There may not be a clean shot at the shooters, she said. But there's a controlling point. Nolan looked at her now. What controlling point? Maya stepped to the map. She did not ask permission. She placed one finger on the valley's eastern wall, then slid it upward to a narrow shelf of rock that sat behind the visible firing positions. The shooters aren't choosing their timing. They're being called. Raven 1 said every movement gets answered. That means someone has a wide view, probably above and behind the guns. Not exposed. Not firing. Watching. The intelligence officer frowned and zoomed the drone feed back through its last stable frames. A smear of rock. A shadow line. Nothing obvious. Cross looked at Maya. You're assuming a spotter. I'm reading the pattern, sir. Hayes scoffed. From a broken radio call? Maya turned her head slightly. From a disciplined ambush. The words landed harder than if she had raised her voice. Nolan studied the map again. The arrogance had left his face, replaced by something more useful. Curiosity. If you're right, he said, that shelf is over 3,000 meters from our western firing point. 3,200, give or take, Maya said. Give or take. Hayes repeated. That's your plan. Maya ignored him and looked at Cross. We need the ridge above the old mortar pit. Higher. Angle. Less ground heat. Better wind read across the basin. Nolan's eyes narrowed. That position has no cover. It has enough. For one shot. Maya looked down at the Barrett. For the right one. The radio cracked again. Kestrel, Raven 1. They're adjusting. We can't stay here much longer. In the room, every man understood what that meant. The enemy had time. Raven 1 did not. Cross turned from the map to Maya. For a second, he saw what the others still missed. Not confidence. Not pride. Recognition. The cold, familiar look of someone who had already stepped into a moment like this before and survived it. He nodded once. "Rourke, take the shot." Hayes stared at him. "Sir." Cross cut him off without looking. Not another word. Maya lifted the Barrett. The room parted around her as she walked out into the hard white morning, toward the ridge, toward the wind, toward a distance everyone else had already called impossible. The ridge above the old mortar pit was not a place built for comfort. It was a jagged shelf of broken stone, sun-bleached and exposed, with nothing between a shooter and the valley except wind, distance, and faith in the math. Years earlier, someone had dragged sandbags up there and called it an observation post. Now most of the bags had split open. The canvas had rotted under sun and snow. Rusted ammunition cans sat half-buried in grit. Maya climbed without slowing. Behind her, Master Sergeant Nolan carried the spotting scope. Commander Cross followed a few steps lower, one hand on the rocks, his radio pressed tight against his vest. Corporal Hayes came last, breathing harder than he wanted anyone to notice. The Barrett rode against Maya's shoulder like it belonged there. No wasted motion. No drama. Just one boot after another. Below them, FB Kestrel shrank into a cluster of tan buildings and antenna masts. Beyond it, the valley opened wide, harsh and beautiful in a way that did not care who lived inside it. Sunlight struck the far ridges and turned them pale gold. Shadows pooled in cuts and shelves where men could disappear completely. Cross glanced toward Maya. Most shooters talked before a hard shot. They asked for wind. Confirmation, cursed the terrain, negotiated with the impossible until the impossible felt smaller. Maya said nothing. At the top, she dropped to one knee and scanned the valley without glass first. That caught Nolan's attention. "You want the scope?" "In a minute." Her eyes moved slowly across the terrain. Not searching. Remembering. At least, that was how it looked to Cross. As if the valley had already unfolded for her in some private language of wind and stone. She watched dust slip sideways off a ridge, watched heat shimmer above the basin floor, watched a torn strip of cloth on a radio mast near the motor pool snap hard for 2 seconds, then fall limp. Nolan set the spotting scope onto its tripod. "Distance to eastern shelf," he said, checking the rangefinder. 3247 from this position. Hayes gave a short, humorless laugh. "Of course it is." Maya glanced at him once. Not offended. Not amused. Just aware. She lowered behind the rifle and folded into position with a kind of quiet finality. The Barrett's bipod bit into stone. Her shoulder settled. Her cheek met the stock. Her left hand tucked under the rear support bag and began making tiny adjustments that looked meaningless until the rifle became completely still. Nolan leaned into the spotting scope. "I've got Raven 1's disabled vehicle. Smoke is thinning. 2 friendlies behind the engine block. 1 behind the rear axle." Cross spoke into the radio. "Raven 1, this is Cross. Hold smoke if you have it. Do not expose yourselves." The reply came back thin through interference. "Copy. We're low. They're shifting higher. We think they're trying to flank down the west cut." Cross looked at Nolan. Nolan shifted the scope. "I see muzzle flashes on the north ridge. 2, maybe 3. But no clean confirmation on the controller." Maya's breathing slowed. In. Out. Pause. Again. The world narrowed around her. Not into silence. Into layers. Close wind. Mid-wind. Far wind. Ridge lift. Valley sink. Heat shimmer. Angle. Mirage. The shot was not a straight line. It never had been. It was a conversation with everything between her and a target most men could not even see. Hayes crouched behind a rock, watching her. For the first time that morning, the joke inside him had nowhere to go. He had expected hesitation. A question. A tremor in the hands. Some little sign he could use later to tell himself he had been right about her. There was none. Only stillness. Nolan spoke softly. "I've got movement behind the eastern shelf. Shadow line, just below the split boulder." Maya did not answer. Cross leaned closer to the scope feed on Nolan's small monitor. A thin dark shape shifted where the rock folded inward. Barely anything. A shoulder. Maybe a pack. Maybe just the mountain playing tricks in the heat. That's him. Cross asked. No confirmation, Nolan said. Could be equipment. Maya's voice came low. He's not carrying a rifle. Hayes frowned. How can you tell from here? He doesn't move like a shooter. Cross looked at her. Explain. A shooter checks his lane. He leans forward. He hunts for the next target. That man is watching everyone else. He moves after they fire, not before. Nolan stayed in the glass. A long second passed. Then his expression changed. She's right, he said quietly. He's signaling with his left hand. Cross felt the weight of the moment drop into place. There it was. Not the loudest threat. The one holding the others together. Maya adjusted elevation. One click. Then another. Nolan read wind in fragments, careful not to crowd her. Left to right at our position. Harder push halfway across. Mirage running opposite near the shelf. This is ugly. Maya gave a faint nod. Ugly still has a pattern. Hayes looked from Nolan to Cross, then to Maya. His voice came smaller than before. You've done this before. No one answered him. Maya's eyes stayed in the scope. For one brief second, a memory passed behind her face. A different valley. A different ridge. A radio call breaking apart under pressure. Men waiting for a shot no one believed could arrive. Then it was gone. She touched the safety. Cross saw it. So did Nolan. The command tent below came over the radio. Commander, Apache's still 9 minutes out. Raven 1 reports enemy closing. 9 minutes. On the valley floor, 9 minutes was a lifetime men did not have. Maya exhaled slowly. Nolan whispered, shooter ready. Cross kept his eyes on the far shelf. Hayes stared at Maya's finger. The wind dropped. Not completely. Just enough. The kind of opening that lasted less than a heartbeat and punished anyone too slow to recognize it. Maya recognized it. Her finger moved. The Barrett fired. The sound slammed into the ridge and rolled out over the valley, deep and brutal, echoing off stone until the whole mountain seemed to answer. Through the scope, Nolan tracked the vapor trail as it bent across open air. No one spoke. Not Hayes. Not Cross. Not the men listening below. The shot traveled farther than doubt, farther than pride, farther than every quiet insult Maya had swallowed since arriving at Kestrel. Then, on the far eastern shelf, the signalman vanished behind the rock. The enemy fire broke its rhythm. One position fired too early. Another stopped completely. A third shifted without command and exposed itself to Raven 1's return fire. Cross heard the SEAL team leader's voice burst through the radio. Kestrel, whatever you just did, do it again. Their coordination just collapsed. Nolan lifted his head slowly from the scope. His face had changed. Not excitement. Not disbelief. Respect. He looked at the rangefinder again, as if the numbers might apologize for being real. 3,247 meters, he said. Hayes went pale. Commander Cross turned toward Maya. She had not moved from the rifle. Her eye was still in the glass. Her voice came flat and calm. Tell Raven 1 to move now. Raven 1 moved the moment Maya gave the order. Not because they knew her. Not because they trusted her name. Because the mountain had gone quiet in the exact place that had been killing them. On the radio, Lieutenant Cole's voice broke through in short bursts. Moving wounded now. 2 men crossing. Covering fire left ridge. Go, go, go. From the exposed shelf above FB Kestrel, Commander Ethan Cross watched the valley through Nolan's monitor. Smoke dragged across the basin in dirty white ribbons. Between broken frames of static, he saw the SEALs below pull back from the disabled vehicle, 1 man supporting another, 2 more firing into the ridge to keep the enemy pinned. They were alive. For the first time since the ambush started, they were moving with purpose instead of desperation. Maya stayed behind the Barrett. She did not celebrate the shot. She did not look at Hayes. She did not wait for anyone to tell her she had done the impossible. Her eye remained in the optic. North Ridge, second firing slit, she said. Nolan snapped back into the scope. I've got him. He's trying to reposition. Winds changed, Maya said. Half value now, Nolan answered. Maya adjusted. One breath. One click. The Barrett thundered again. Across the valley, stone burst near the firing slit. The shooter disappeared behind cover. Whether fear or impact had moved him, no one on the ridge cared. The fire from that side stopped long enough for Raven 1 to cross another stretch of open ground. Cross keyed his radio. Raven 1, keep moving west. You've got 30 seconds before they regroup. Copy. Moving. Hayes crouched beside the rocks, his face stripped of every casual insult he had worn that morning. The same rifle he had mocked now sounded like judgment. The woman he had called support staff was reading a battlefield at a distance he could barely understand. He looked at her hands. Still steady. No shake after recoil. No rushed correction. No hunger to prove herself. That frightened him more than anger would have. Master Sergeant Nolan had stopped questioning her. Now he worked beside her like a man who knew exactly what kind of shooter he had been given. East shelf clear. North ridge suppressed. I have possible movement high right, near the Black Rock. Maya shifted the rifle a few degrees. No. Decoy. Nolan checked again. A second later, a flash came from lower left. He exhaled. Lower left. You saw that before he fired. Maya did not answer. Cross did not miss the silence. There were silences that came from fear. Others came from pride. Maya's came from a place farther away, buried under missions no one at Kestrel had been cleared to read. The valley below erupted again as Raven 1 returned fire from a new position. Lieutenant Cole came over the radio. We're almost at the riverbed. One casualty stable. We can hold if extraction reaches the south cut. Negative, Cross said. Keep moving. Do not stop in the riverbed. Maya spoke without lifting her head. They marked it. Cross turned. What? The riverbed, she said. They wanted them there. Nolan scanned the terrain. At first, he saw nothing. Just dry stone, tire tracks, old flood lines, and the dark curve of the river channel cutting through the valley floor. Then he saw it. Small disturbances along the bend. Too even to be natural. His voice dropped. Commander. Cross leaned in. Nolan pointed at the monitor. She's right. That path's prepared. Cross felt cold move through his chest. Not fear. Recognition. A trap inside the trap. He grabbed the radio. Raven 1, halt before the riverbed. Do not enter. Repeat, do not enter the riverbed. Static swallowed the first half of Cole's answer. Then, say again. Cross shouted this time. Do not enter the riverbed. On the screen, the lead seal stopped so abruptly the man behind him nearly collided with his back. He raised a fist. The whole team froze at the edge of the dry channel. A second passed. Then enemy fire struck the riverbed ahead of them from two hidden angles. If they had taken 3 more steps, they would have been caught in open ground with no cover and no way back. No one on the ridge spoke. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. Hayes slowly looked at Maya. She was still scanning. Still working. Still treating the impossible as if it were simply another problem that required discipline. High shelf, she said. They're trying to re-establish command. Nolan found the movement. 2 figures near the split boulder. One crawling back toward the position where the signalman had been. Another waving sharply toward the lower guns. They're replacing him, Nolan said. Cross stared at the screen. They have another spotter? They have someone trying to become one, Maya said. The words carried no emotion. That was what made them heavy. Maya adjusted the Barrett again, but this time her breathing changed. Just slightly. A longer pause before the exhale. A narrower stillness in her shoulders. Cross noticed. So did Nolan. The shot was harder now. The wind had turned unstable. Heat had thickened above the valley floor. The target was lower, smaller, partially masked by rock. Hayes swallowed. There's no way she can. He stopped himself. Too late. Maya heard him. She did not look away from the scope. Respect the distance, she said quietly. Not your doubt. The sentence hit Hayes harder than a shout. Nolan gave the correction. Wind uncertain past midline. Mirage switching. Maya waited. Down in the valley, Raven 1 held at the riverbed's edge, exposed but alive. Enemy rounds cracked against rock nearby. Dust lifted around them. Time was thinning. Cross felt every second. Maya, he said, low enough that only the ridge heard it. It was the first time he used her first name. She answered with the rifle. The Barrett fired. The sound rolled across Kestrel, across the mortar pit, across the valley where men were learning the difference between noise and precision. Nolan tracked the shot. For one breath, his face showed nothing. Then he said, command movement stopped. Raven 1 moved again, cutting away from the riverbed toward the south rocks, exactly where Maya had known they needed to go. Cross watched them disappear into cover. Only then did Maya lift her head from the scope. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried the weight of old valleys. Behind her, Hayes finally found his voice. Staff Sergeant, she turned slightly. He looked at the Barrett, then at the valley, then at her. The apologies struggled in his throat and came out smaller than his pride had been. I didn't know. Maya studied him for 1 second. Then she looked back toward Raven 1. No, she said. You didn't. The extraction bird came in low over the south cut 7 minutes later. Its rotors beat the valley dust into a brown storm. From the ridge, Maya watched Raven 1 move toward the landing zone in staggered pairs, disciplined even under pressure, wounded but not broken. The enemy fired twice from the high rocks, both shots late, both shots angry. They had lost control. That was the difference. A bad ambush was noise. A good ambush was rhythm. Maya had broken the rhythm. Commander Cross stood beside her with the radio pressed to his ear, eyes fixed on the valley until the last seal reached the helicopter. The bird lifted hard, nose dipping, tail swinging through dust, then climbed toward the western pass, with 2 escort gunships finally arriving too late to matter. Only when the helicopter cleared the ridge did Cross lower the radio. Raven 1 is airborne, he said. No one cheered. The silence that followed was heavier than celebration. Master Sergeant Nolan folded the spotting scope slowly. His hands moved with care, but his eyes kept returning to the far shelf across the valley. The rangefinder still displayed the number in cold digital truth. 3,247 meters. Hayes had not spoken since his failed apology. He stood a few feet away, helmet under one arm, staring at the rifle as if it had become something sacred and dangerous. Maya sat back from the Barrett and cleared the weapon. Magazine out. Chamber checked. Safety on. Every motion exact. Cross watched her complete the process before he said anything. You knew where the second trap was. Maya closed the dust cover. Yes, sir. How? She looked over the valley. The morning sun was higher now, washing the rocks in hard white light. Down there, the riverbed looked harmless again. Just stone and shadow. That terrain was too inviting, she said. Enemy gave them pressure from behind, left them one obvious escape route, and kept the first spotter high enough to watch whether they took it. Nolan glanced at Cross. She read all that from here. Maya lifted the Barrett and rested it against her shoulder. No, she said. I read what they wanted us to miss. Cross studied her. There was no pride in her voice. No hunger for approval. Just a clean statement of fact, delivered by someone who had learned that facts mattered more than feelings when men were bleeding time. Below them, FB Kestrel had changed. People had come out from the operations building, the motor pool, the medical tent. They stood in small clusters, looking up toward the ridge where the shot had come from. Word was already spreading faster than the dust could settle. A woman had taken the impossible shot. The quiet sergeant from the armory. The one nobody knew. The one some had mocked. Before breakfast, Cross started down the ridge. Bring the rifle. I want the full shot log in the TOC. Maya followed. Hayes moved aside as she passed. He did not look at her boots now. He did not look at her size. He looked at the space around her the way soldiers look at a live wire. At the base of the ridge, the first medic truck rolled toward the landing pad. The extraction bird came in hard 20 minutes later, carrying Raven 1 back through a cloud of dust and rotor wash. Men ran forward with stretchers. Medics shouted instructions. The SEALs came off the helicopter exhausted, faces streaked with dirt, eyes sharp with the strange relief of people who know the day almost ended differently. Lieutenant Cole was the last one down. His left sleeve was torn. His radio antenna had snapped in half. Dust clung to his jaw like ash. He saw Cross first and gave a tired nod. Then his eyes moved past him. To Maya. Cole stopped walking. For a moment, the landing zone noise seemed to thin around him. He knew. Not everything, but enough. You were the shooter? He asked. Maya gave one small nod. Cole stepped closer, still breathing hard from the valley. We were 3 steps from that riverbed. I know. His throat worked once. He looked toward the helicopter, where his wounded teammate was being moved toward the medical tent. Then Cole straightened. Not a full ceremony. Not a performance. Just a soldier recognizing the person who had bought his team another sunrise. Thank you, Staff Sergeant. Maya held his gaze. You moved well. Cole almost laughed, but there was too much weight in his chest for it. That's what you're going with. It's what mattered. Cross saw Cole's expression shift. Confusion first. Then understanding. Maya was not being cold. She was keeping the moment where it belonged on the team, on the mission, on the discipline that had kept them alive long enough for her shot to matter. From the edge of the landing zone, Corporal Hayes watched the exchange with his mouth closed for once. Behind him, one of the junior marksmen whispered, "Who is she?" Hayes did not answer. Because now he wanted to know too. Inside the TOC, the shot log became a problem. No one knew how to process. Nolan entered the data himself. Range. Wind call. Elevation. Angle. Time from contact to suppression. Confirmed disruption of command element. Secondary prevention of movement into prepared kill zone. The room filled slowly. Officers. Operators. Analysts. Men who had ignored Maya that morning now found reasons to stand close enough to hear. Cross leaned over the table, looking at the numbers. This was not luck, he said. No one disagreed. The intelligence officer pulled up Maya's personnel file. Most of it looked ordinary at first glance. Standard service history. Marksmanship qualifications. Deployment records with wide blank spaces where details should have been. Then he clicked into a restricted attachment. A red warning flashed across the screen. Cross narrowed his eyes. Open it. The officer hesitated. Sir, this is compartmented. I said open it. The screen changed. For several seconds, no one spoke. There was a mission report from 3 years earlier. Location redacted. Unit redacted. Enemy commander redacted. But one line remained visible. Confirmed interdiction shot. 3,247 meters. Shooter. Rourke, Maya E. Nolan looked from the screen to Maya. Hayes stood near the door, face pale. Cross finally understood why her name had felt familiar. Not because he had read it in a roster. Because men had spoken about that shot like a ghost story. A bullet through mountain wind. A team saved beyond the edge of possibility. A shooter nobody could identify. Cross turned slowly toward her. All this time, he said, you were the one. Maya looked at the report, then back at him. No, sir. The room held its breath. She picked up the Barrett case. I was the one who did the work. The room did not move. For several seconds, the Tactical Operations Center held the kind of silence that comes after a truth arrives too late. The mission report stayed on the screen. Confirmed interdiction shot, 3,247 meters. Shooter, Rourke, Maya E. No one laughed now. No one leaned against the wall with easy confidence. No one made comments about support staff or rifle weight or whether a woman her size belonged behind a Barrett .50. The same men who had barely looked at her that morning were now staring as if the floor beneath their boots had shifted. Maya closed the rifle case. The latch clicked once. It sounded louder than it should have. Commander Ethan Cross looked at the redacted file, then back at her. Why wasn't this in the briefing? The intelligence officer swallowed. Sir, the attachment was restricted above standard operational access. Her transfer packet only listed her as Sniper Support and Weapons Systems Advisory. Advisory, Nolan repeated under his breath. He almost smiled, but it died before it reached his face. Because nothing about that valley felt funny. Cross stepped closer to the screen. Who authorized the restriction? The officer checked the file header. Naval Special Warfare Command. Joint Compartmented Archive. Most of the operation is still sealed. Hayes stood near the door, his shoulders stiff, his eyes fixed on the floor. Maya noticed. She always noticed. But she did not give him the mercy of looking away first. Cross turned to her. Staff Sergeant Rourke, I need to understand something. Maya stood at ease. Not relaxed. Never relaxed. Just steady. Yes, sir. You came onto this base with a record like that, and you let men talk to you like you were unqualified. Maya's eyes moved from Cross to the map table, then to the Valley feed still flickering on one monitor. I didn't come here to be known. Cross held her gaze. Then why did you come? To keep people alive. The answer was simple. That made it impossible to challenge. Nolan looked down at the shot log again, studying the numbers like they might reveal something about the woman standing in front of him. The math was there. The range. The wind correction. The angle. The timing. But the math did not explain the calm. It did not explain how she had seen the riverbed trap before anyone else. It did not explain how she had known the signalman was the spine of the ambush. Cross knew that kind of knowledge came from somewhere. And it always cost something. Before he could ask, the TOC door opened. Lieutenant Cole entered from the medical tent, one sleeve newly bandaged, dust still ground into the lines of his face. He had refused a stretcher. Nobody seemed surprised. His eyes went straight to Maya. Commander, he said, Raven 1 is accounted for. 1 serious injury stable. 2 minor. All alive. A quiet breath moved through the room. Not relief exactly. Something deeper. A debt being recognized. Cole stepped toward the table and saw the screen. He read the line. Then he looked at Maya again. Your ghost line. The name changed the air. Hayes looked up. Nolan went still. Even Cross's expression sharpened. Maya did not react, but something in her eyes closed slightly. Cole's voice lowered. I heard about you in Syria. Nobody knew the name. Just the call sign. Ghost line. The shooter who stopped a mountain ambush from beyond visual range. Maya said nothing. Cole nodded slowly, as if her silence confirmed more than words could. You saved another team before us. Maya's jaw tightened just enough for Cross to see. One team made it out, she said. The room understood what she did not say. Not every name in that old report had come home. Cross looked at the redacted file again, and now the black bars seemed less like secrecy and more like graves no one was allowed to point at. Hayes shifted near the door. His voice came out rough. Staff Sergeant. Maya turned. Every eye followed. Hayes looked smaller now. Not physically. Something worse. He looked like a man standing beside the wreckage of his own certainty. What I said this morning, he began. Maya waited. He forced himself to continue. It was out of line. No one helped him. No one softened the room. He had made the insult in public. Now the apology had to stand there too. I was wrong, Hayes said. About you. About the rifle. About all of it. Maya studied him. Her face gave nothing away. Then she said, You were careless. Hayes nodded once. Yes, Sergeant. You saw what you expected to see. Not what was in front of you. Yes, Sergeant. That gets people killed. The words landed clean. Not cruel. Not emotional. Clean. Hayes took them without flinching this time. Cross watched the exchange and understood why Maya's silence had never been weakness. It had been restraint. The kind built over years of swallowing judgment until the mission demanded truth. Maya picked up the Barrett case. I'll submit the weapon maintenance report by 1800. Cross almost laughed from disbelief. After everything that had happened, she was returning to paperwork. But that was discipline. Not performance. Not ego. Discipline. Maya, he said. She stopped at the door. Cross rarely used first names in front of the room. Everyone noticed. You saved Raven 1 today. Maya looked back. No, sir, she said. Raven 1 held under fire. Nolan spotted clean. You trusted the call. Her eyes moved once to Hayes. And some people learned faster than others. A faint shift passed through the room. Not humor. Not comfort. Respect beginning to take shape. Cross nodded slowly. Still, that shot changed the fight. Maya held the rifle case at her side. The shot was the last thing that happened, she said. The work came before it. Then she walked out of the TOC into the hard afternoon light, leaving the screen behind her, leaving the old report open, leaving every man in that room to understand what they had failed to see. Outside, the valley wind crossed the base again. This time, no one called it empty. By dusk, the story had already changed shape 3 times. In the mess hall, they said Maya Rourke had made a shot no human being should have attempted. In the motor pool, they said she had seen a trap hidden in a dry riverbed from 3 kilometers away. By the medical tent, where Raven One's wounded operator slept under clean bandages and low lights, they simply said her name with the quiet weight soldiers reserved for people who are the reason someone is still breathing. Maya heard none of it. Or maybe she heard all of it and chose not to carry it. She was back at the armory before sunset, standing under the same strip of shade where Hayes had mocked her that morning. The Barrett was open on the table again. Dust from the ridge clung to the weapon's edges. Fine grit had worked into the case foam. The optic bore a faint smear from the valley wind. Maya cleaned each piece in silence. Outside, the base moved differently around her now. Footsteps slowed when men passed the armory. Conversations lowered. A few. Soldiers looked in, then looked away, uncertain whether to nod, salute, apologize, or pretend they had always known she was dangerous. She gave them no help. Respect that needed instructions was not respect yet. Commander Ethan Cross watched her from the doorway for almost a full minute before speaking. You always disappear after saving people? Maya ran a cloth along the receiver. Only when the rifle needs cleaning, sir. Cross stepped inside. The armory smelled of oil, metal, dust, and old heat. Behind Maya, the evening light cut through the slatted window and laid long bars across the floor. He placed a folder on the table. Maya did not look at it. That came through from command, Cross said. Your sealed file unlocked after the shot log was submitted. Her hand paused for the first time that day. Only for a fraction of a second. Then she kept cleaning. Then someone upstairs is nervous. They confirmed Ghostline. Maya said nothing. Cross opened the folder, but he did not push it toward her. I read what they allowed me to read. That won't be much. It was enough. Maya set one component down, perfectly aligned with the others. Cross lowered his voice. 3 years ago, your team was pinned in a mountain pass. Enemy command element was controlling fire from outside normal engagement range. You took the shot. Saved most of the team. Maya's eyes stayed on the table. Most? That one word changed the room. Cross closed the folder slowly. He had commanded men long enough to know when not to step carelessly into someone else's dead. But command also meant asking the question no one else could ask. Is that why you don't want the recognition? Maya looked up then. Her face was calm. Her eyes were not. Recognition doesn't put names back on a roster. Cross absorbed the answer without flinching. Outside, a vehicle rolled past, its tires grinding over gravel. Somewhere near the barracks, a group of men laughed too loudly, then quieted when they passed the armory door. Maya returned to the rifle. Cross watched her work. You understand what happened today, he said. Raven One is alive because of you. Raven One is alive because they stayed disciplined under fire. And because you saw what no one else saw. Maya slid the bolt carrier into place. I saw what the enemy was doing. No, Cross said. You saw what everyone in my TOC missed. That made her stop. Cross did not soften the words. I missed it too. Maya looked at him. There was no accusation in her face. Somehow that made it worse. Cross stood straighter. I've led teams across 4 countries. I've buried men I still hear when the room gets quiet. I know talent when I see it. But this morning, I almost let a file label tell me what you were. Maya's voice stayed even. You gave the order. Late. But you gave it. Cross almost smiled. Is that forgiveness? No, sir. That's accuracy. For the first time all day, something like warmth touched the edge of his expression. Then footsteps approached the armory. Hayes appeared in the doorway. He had removed his helmet. His uniform was still dusty from the ridge. His face carried the stiff discomfort of a man who had rehearsed an apology and discovered rehearsals did not matter once the person was standing in front of him. Cross turned slightly. Hayes looked at him, then at Maya. "Commander." "Staff Sergeant." Maya did not answer. Hayes stepped inside anyway. In his hands was a small black logbook. "I reviewed the maintenance roster," he said. "You were scheduled to clean the Barrett alone all week." Maya waited. Hayes swallowed. "I put myself on it. Not as punishment. Not unless you say it is." Cross watched silently. Hayes placed the logbook on the table, but not too close to the rifle. He had learned at least that much. "I want to learn the platform properly," Hayes said. "From the beginning. Cleaning. Ballistics. Wind. All of it." Maya studied him. This was not the apology from the TOC. That one had been about shame. This one was about correction. Better. Still not enough. "Why?" she asked. Hayes looked at the rifle, then back at her. "Because today I thought confidence was the same thing as confidence." The armory went quiet. Maya's expression did not change, but Cross saw something shift behind her eyes. Hayes continued. "And because I don't want my ignorance standing next to someone else's life again." That was the first honest thing he had said to her. Maya picked up the logbook, opened it, and wrote one line beneath his name. 0500, weapons table. No coffee. She closed it and handed it back. Hayes nodded once. "Yes, Staff Sergeant." He turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing." Maya looked at him. He stood straighter. "What you said on the ridge. Respect the distance, not my doubt." His jaw tightened. "I'll remember that." Maya held his gaze for a moment. "Remember it before the trigger," she said. "After is too late." Hayes left with the logbook held like orders. Cross watched him go. Then he looked back at Maya. "You just accepted a student." "I accepted a responsibility." Cross nodded toward the valley beyond the base walls, now darkening under the first blue edge of night. "And tomorrow?" Maya began reassembling the Barrett. "Tomorrow the mountain will still be there." The bolt locked into place with a clean metallic sound. "And so will I." At 0500, Hayes was already at the weapons table. No coffee. No jokes. No audience. The sky above FB Kestrel was still black at the edges, with only a thin gray line forming behind the mountains. The generators hummed low. Somewhere near the flight pad, a mechanic coughed into the cold. The base had not fully woken yet, which was exactly how Maya preferred it. Hayes stood beside the table with the logbook under one arm, trying not to look nervous. Maya arrived without announcement. The Barrett case hung from one hand. Her steps were even, quiet, certain. She set the case on the table, opened it, and looked at Hayes. "What's the first rule?" Hayes straightened. "Treat every weapon as loaded." Maya waited. He understood. He opened the case, removed the magazine, checked the chamber, checked it again, then angled the rifle so she could verify. Only then did Maya nod. Again. Hayes blinked. "I just cleared it. And now you'll clear it like your best friend is standing downrange." The words landed exactly where they were meant to. Hayes swallowed, then repeated the process slower. Magazine. Chamber. Safety. Visual check. Physical check. Maya watched his hands, not his face. Better. For the next hour, she taught him nothing dramatic. No legendary shot. No war story. No secret trick that turned a rifle into a miracle. She taught him how to clean carbon from places lazy soldiers ignored. How to inspect the optic mount for hairline movement. How to feel the difference between a smooth bolt and one that was pretending to be smooth. How to lay each component in the same position every time so the hands could find truth even when the mind was tired. Hayes listened. Really listened. That was new. At 0615, Master Sergeant Nolan appeared at the armory door with 2 metal cups of coffee. He saw Hayes working under Maya's supervision and stopped. "Didn't think he'd show," Nolan said. Maya kept her eyes on the rifle. Neither did he. Hayes did not argue. Nolan handed 1 cup to Maya. She took it, set it aside untouched, and pointed to the barrel assembly. "Explain why this matters." Hayes looked at the part, then chose his words carefully. "A dirty weapon can still fire. That's what makes people careless." But at distance, small problems become big misses. A loose mount, bad maintenance, bad data, all of it compounds. Maya said nothing. Nolan took a sip of coffee and looked at Hayes with mild surprise. Hayes continued. And when someone's life depends on the shot, a miss isn't just a miss. Maya finally looked up. No, she said. It's a decision you made before you pulled the trigger. The lesson followed Hayes into breakfast. The mess hall was loud when Maya entered, but the sound shifted as she crossed the floor. Not silent. That would have been too obvious. Just lower. More careful. Men who had spoken over her before now made room without being asked. She took a tray and moved through the line. Scrambled eggs. Toast. Black coffee. Simple things. At the back of the room, Raven 1 sat together. Lieutenant Cole saw her first. He stood. Then the rest of his team stood too. One by one. Not sharply. Not for rank. For debt. The movement spread through the mess hall like a current. Conversations died. Chairs scraped. A few soldiers rose awkwardly, unsure whether they were supposed to. Others stayed seated, watching. Maya stopped with her tray in hand. Her eyes moved over Raven 1. Then to Cole. Sit down, she said. Cole almost smiled. Yes, Staff Sergeant. They sat. But the room had already seen it. Respect did not need volume. Across the hall, Commander Cross watched from near the coffee station. He said nothing. He did not turn the moment into a speech. He knew better than to cheapen it. Maya sat alone by the window. A minute later, Hayes approached with his tray. He stopped 2 steps away. Permission to sit? Maya looked at the empty chair across from her. This isn't a classroom. No, Sergeant. She took a sip of coffee. Hayes remained standing. Finally, Maya nodded once. He sat. For a while, neither spoke. Outside the window, the mountains glowed under the rising sun. The same valley that had nearly swallowed Raven 1 now looked almost peaceful, as if stone could pretend innocence after witnessing violence. Hayes looked toward it. Do you ever get used to it? Maya did not ask what he meant. No, he nodded slowly. Good. That made her look at him. He lowered his voice. I think if I got used to it, I'd start making the same mistakes again. Maya studied him for a moment. Then she returned to her breakfast. That's the first smart thing you've said. Hayes almost smiled, then decided against it. Across the room, the intelligence officer hurried through the mess hall toward Cross, a tablet in his hand and urgency on his face. Cross read the screen. His expression changed. Not panic. Not surprise. Something colder. He looked toward Maya. She saw it from across the room. The quiet before another storm. Cross approached her table. Rourke. Maya set down her fork. Yes, sir. Command intercepted chatter from the valley. Yesterday's ambush wasn't random. Hayes sat straighter. Cross placed the tablet on the table. A grainy image showed a man standing beside a stone wall, face half hidden by scarf and shadow. Maya looked at the photo once. Only once. But Cross saw her eyes change. You know him, he said. Maya's voice came low. I know his work. Cross waited. Around them, the mess hall seemed to fade. Maya looked back toward the mountains. That wasn't just a spotter team yesterday, she said. It was a test. Hayes felt the words. Move cold through his chest. A test for what? Maya stood slowly. Her chair legs scraped against the floor. For me. The mess hall went quiet around those 2 words. For me. Hayes stared at Maya, waiting for her to explain. Commander Cross did not. He had seen that look before, the look of a soldier recognizing an enemy not by face, but by pattern. The kind of pattern that stayed buried in memory until it appeared again, years later, in a different valley with different men at risk. Cross lowered his voice. Who is he? Maya looked at the tablet. The man in the grainy image stood half-turned near a stone wall, one hand raised, 2 fingers extended in a signal most people would miss. His name won't be real, she said. But 3 years ago, his unit ran mountain ambushes with layered kill zones, false escape routes, and decoy shooters. Cole had entered behind Cross, still bandaged, still pale from the day before. The riverbed, he said. Maya nodded once. He wanted you there. Hayes felt his stomach tighten. And yesterday? Maya's eyes moved toward the window, toward the ridgeline burning gold under the morning sun. Yesterday he wanted to know if Ghostline was still alive. No one spoke after that. Outside, the base alarm sounded. Not the full attack siren. The contact alert. A clipped voice came over the speaker system. All QRF personnel to staging. Possible movement North Ridge. Repeat, possible movement North Ridge. Cross was already moving. Talk. Now. The room broke into motion. Chairs scraped. Trays were abandoned. Boots hit the floor in hard rhythm as men ran toward weapons, vehicles, radios, duty. Hayes stood too fast and nearly knocked over his coffee. Maya caught the cup before it fell, set it back on the table, and walked out with the same calm she had carried all along. Not slow. Not rushed. Ready. Inside the TOC, the screen showed scattered movement across the far slopes. Not a full assault. Not yet. Just enough shadows to pull attention. Just enough noise to make commanders look one way while the real hand moved somewhere else. Cross studied the map. They're baiting us. Maya stood beside him. Yes. Where? She did not answer. Immediately. Her eyes moved over the valley image, the dry riverbed, the eastern shelf, the broken ridges, the old goat trails cut into the stone. The room waited. This time, no one questioned why. Not Nolan. Not Hayes. Not Cross. Maya pointed to a narrow saddle west of the ridge. There. The intelligence officer frowned. We have no confirmed movement there. That's why it matters. Cross looked at the saddle. If an enemy team crossed that point, they could see the extraction route, the motor pool, even the medevac pad. Not enough for an invasion. Enough for one decisive strike. Enough to embarrass the base. Enough to kill the people who had survived yesterday. Cross keyed the radio. Shift surveillance west saddle. Quietly. Do not move QRF into the open. The feed adjusted. For several seconds, there was nothing. Then Nolan leaned closer. Hold. A shadow separated from the rocks. Then another. Then a third. The room changed. Not panic. Focus. Cross looked at Maya. They came for confirmation. Maya's face was unreadable. No, she said. They came for arrogance. Hayes looked at her. For the first time, he understood. The enemy had expected her to answer the challenge herself. Expected pride. Expected the legend to climb the ridge again and prove she was still the ghost they feared. But Maya did not move toward the rifle rack. She turned to Nolan. Put 2 teams on the lower approach. Keep them unseen. Then to Hayes. Get the range cards from yesterday and update them for the west saddle. Hayes froze for half a second. She had given him responsibility. Not praise. Responsibility. Yes, Staff Sergeant. He ran. Cross watched her. You're not taking the shot? Maya looked at the screen. If I do, he learns where I am. And if you don't? He learns the base is not one woman. The sentence landed in the TOC like a correction to every man who had misunderstood the story. This had never been about one impossible shot. It had been about discipline. Nolan coordinated the hidden teams. Hayes returned with the updated board, breathing hard, eyes sharp. Cole took position near the radio, refusing again to sit down. Cross stood at the center of it all, letting the room work, letting the people who had earned trust carry pieces of the fight. Minutes passed. Then the west saddle erupted with controlled fire from Kestrel's hidden positions. The enemy team broke formation almost instantly. Their timing collapsed. Their escape route closed. The man from the photograph appeared for one brief second near a black seam of rock, turning as if searching for the shooter he had come to challenge. But Maya was not on the ridge. She was in the TOC, watching him lose to a team. Nolan's voice cut through the room. Enemy withdrawing. Cross lifted the radio. Hold pursuit. Let them run. Track them. Maya nodded faintly. Good order. Good restraint. The screen showed the shadowed figure disappear behind the saddle, smaller now, no longer a hunter, no longer a myth. Just a man who had built a plan around pride and found none waiting for him. The room exhaled. Hayes looked at Maya. You knew he'd expect you alone. Maya turned from the monitor. He read the legend, she said. Not the soldier. Cross stood beside her, his face carved with the quiet humility of a commander who had learned something he would not forget. Later that evening, as the sun dropped behind the mountains, Raven One gathered near the armory. Nolan stood with them. Hayes stood a little behind Maya, no longer trying to be seen, only trying to be useful. Commander Cross stepped forward. There was no speech prepared, only truth. Yesterday, he said, I watched one soldier make a shot that saved lives. Today, I watched that same soldier refuse glory so the team could win. Maya looked uncomfortable with every eye on her. Cross continued anyway. Some of us saw rank. Some saw size. Some saw silence and mistook it for weakness. His eyes moved briefly to Hayes, then back to the group. That mistake ends here. He turned to Maya. Staff Sergeant Rourke, this base owes you more than thanks. Maya held his gaze. No, sir. The answer came soft, but everyone heard it. It owes the next quiet soldier a fair look. No one moved. Then Hayes stepped forward. Not too close. Staff Sergeant, he said, will be at the weapons table at 0500. Maya looked at him. We. Behind him, 3. Junior marksman straightened. Hayes nodded. No coffee. For the first time, Maya almost smiled. Almost. She picked up the Barrett case and looked toward the darkening valley. The mountain was still there. So was the wind. So were the doubts men carried until truth forced them to put those doubts down. But that night, at Forward Operating Base Kestrel, no one called Maya Rourke support staff. No one asked whether she belonged behind the rifle. And no one forgot the lesson written across the valley in silence. Respect is earned, not demanded.